Hello, fourth graders. Welcome to our robotics class. So this is week 19. And so this week we're continuing. So I'll just quickly, in case you forgot. So last week we started this presentation. The topic was engineers and the engineering design process, right? So we talked about what is an engineer, and we watched the cute little video and they explained about what an engineer is. And then we looked at some different types of engineers, right? And we talked about how the field of engineering is really growing, and there's going to be so many new types of engineers as the years keep going and going and going, and new things are created and invented, right? So this week we're talking about the engineering design process. And why is this so important? Because whenever something is created, oh, and thank you for the kids that sent in their homework. So we had, I know that that it's due today, so I believe that a lot more of you will be submitting it. But I just wanted to thank Brianna, Vivian, Lily, Sua, Elijah, and Evelyn. They all got theirs in early, so great job. Good start to the third quarter. I just want to remind you that your assignments are always due the next week. So for example, an assignment that I give you this week will be due next Wednesday, right? So please make sure that you're doing your assignments every week for robotics class and for technology class. This is the third quarter. There's no reason why you should be saying, I forgot it. I didn't know we had one. You should be checking and knowing what you need to do, right? You're going in fifth grade next year. And so you have to be responsible with getting your work done every week. This is important. This is part of showing us that you know that you're responsible and that you know how to be independent, right? So it shouldn't be the last week or the last day and you're getting everything done then. Keep up with the work every week so that you don't fall behind, okay? All right, so when we're creating something like a robot or a computer, or it could be anything, right? We're looking at a problem, we're trying to come up with a solution. And it's not just this thing where we just snap our fingers and voila, there it is, our creation. Everything's fixed. It takes a lot of trial and error. It takes a lot of thought, planning, preparation for an engineer to really be successful in addressing a problem and coming up with a solution and then actually building something that works, right? So the engineering design process is a method of thinking that takes a designer through necessary steps to create an idea and end up with a working product. Why am I just reading this? Because it's going to be one of your homework questions. It's going to ask, what is the engineering process? And so hopefully you'll be like, oh yeah, I remember. We went over that in the lesson. So you can always come back to the video if you forgot what it was, or maybe you just jotted it down real quick in your notebook. This is one of your homework questions. All right, so let's watch this video. And then after we watch the video, we're gonna go through each of the steps. And then we will kind of just summarize. She kind of goes through them in the video, but okay, so let me put it on for you guys. And then after it's done, I'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
I'm gonna take a wild guess and say you've probably used the phone. And I bet you've enjoyed the benefits of a little thing we call air conditioning. You know who made those things possible? Engineers. We were just talking about engineers in our last video, people who design and build things to solve problems, and there are lots of different kinds of engineers. No matter what type of engineer you want to be though, civil, mechanical, electrical, or a kind that doesn't even exist yet, there's a series of steps that all engineers follow when they're trying to solve a problem. This process is called, wait for it, the engineering process. Makes sense to me. So what sort of steps are included in the engineering process, and why do we need it? Let's go through it step by step and discover how awesome things are made. First thing you gotta do is just define the problem. I mean, before you can solve a problem, you have to figure out what it is, right? For example, back in the 1800s, an engineer named Alexander Graham Bell was trying to come up with a simpler, cheaper way for people to communicate. Back then, the best you could do was a telegraph, which was an old-fashioned system of sending messages over electrical wires. Bell identified his problem. Communicating with people who are far away was expensive and took a lot of time. So his invention, or solution to this problem, was something you may have heard of: the telephone. Nice. Now, once you've figured out what problem you want to tackle, you need to do your research. You can start by just making a list of questions you have and what information you need to start answering them. You can also look around and find what other things already exist that have tried to solve this same problem. Maybe they can be improved. A good example here is the man who helped us blow stuff up. The chemist and engineer Alfred Nobel invented the explosive known as dynamite, not because he particularly enjoyed explosions, but because miners and other people who, well, needed to blow stuff up to do their jobs, needed an explosive that was safer to use. So before he started on that problem, Nobel did research to see what explosives already existed, which ones worked well, and which ones didn't. This takes us to step 3. Develop a solution. After your research is done, this is where you say exactly how you think you can solve the problem. And once you've thought of a good solution, you have to figure out how it'll actually work and what it will look like. So you have to design your solution. This is where you get to draw. Civil engineers always sketch out their ideas, like buildings and bridges and towers, to show what they'll look like when they're done. Gustave Eiffel designed the famous Eiffel Tower in France, and he definitely showed up on day 1 of construction knowing exactly what it was gonna look like. On to step 5, build a prototype. A prototype is just a simple model that lets you test out your design. It can be as big as the real thing's going to be, or it can be a smaller version. You just need to have a prototype so you can test it. This may be the most important step in the whole process. Engineers need to test their design to see if it works like they want it to. So, say if your building's a big tower, does it stand up? Does it stay standing up? If you're designing something with moving parts, does it work the way you want? Now take it from me, my future engineers. You might have a great idea, a really terrific solution to a really big problem. But when you get to this step, your prototype probably won't work exactly the way you want. At least, not on the first try. Most engineers test their prototypes over and over and over again. That's why a lot of time and brain power goes into the very last step: evaluating your solutions. Evaluating just means asking yourself whether things are working the way you want, or why they are, or aren't. I like to think of this step as question everything. This is when engineers review all of the facts and ask themselves questions, followed by even more questions. What worked well? Why did it work? Why didn't it work? How could it be made better? And most of the time, the answers to these questions are going to send you back several steps. Like, once you figured out why your prototype wasn't working, you'll have to design a new solution and then build it and then test it again. Sometimes engineers go through this process 4, 5, even 6 times or more. Take Willis Carrier, the inventor of modern air conditioning. He tested his prototypes for years before he figured out the design that worked the way he wanted and solved the problem he wanted to fix. Like all engineers, he failed a lot before he succeeded. And that's okay, because he learned something from every failure, which made his product even better in the end. And I, for one, am glad he kept going. So the engineering process is a series of steps that engineers, or anyone, should use when they're facing a challenge. The process is important because it allows engineers to experiment and also to fail. Both of these things give engineers a chance to go back and improve on their original idea, giving us something even better down the road. So the next time you fail at something, don't feel too bad. Think about the telephone and the air conditioner and the Eiffel Tower, and then try again.
Okay, so hopefully that video was helpful. I feel like I like those little videos because they have a lot of good visuals to help explain it, and they really try to tailor it towards kids your age, right? So she was going through all the steps in the engineering process, right? And just talking about how it really, like I was saying earlier, you don't just get it on the first try. So I think that you have to realize that it's an iterative process. What does that mean? It's like a loop, a cycle, right? Where you just kind of keep going through it and going through it and going through it until you get to your final product that you're satisfied with. You're like, this is exactly how we designed it. It's working. It's solving the problem. And now we can, market it to people. So that's just something for you guys to think about, just how the whole process works. And, I don't know if you guys remember the story Bubblegum Brain. I know we've probably read it a few times, I'd say, because you guys are in 4th grade now, but it talks about your growth mindset, right? The way that you think about the world and the way that you go through your life, right? And if you have the brick brain, then you're just kind of that person that just wants to get everything right the first time. You don't like when anything changes. You're not really into challenges, right? And you don't really grow your brain. You just want to have it perfect all the times, and you don't really want to fail. And then we have our growth bubblegum brain, growth mindset brain. And the bubblegum brain is like, you know what? I fail sometimes, but that's okay because it just means that I'm learning. And it's one of my attempts at learning something new. And as long as I don't give up, then I haven't officially failed. Because if you think about it, you might have failed something, but the only way that failure is ever completely done is if you give up, and then that's it, you failed. But if you keep going and keep going and keep going until you get it and you succeed, then you haven't actually failed, right? And then your failures are your teachable moments where you can learn probably way more than you learn when you just get something right the first time. And so you really do need to have a growth mindset when you're working with engineering and anything with coding and robotics. And those fields are just fields where you have to be okay with trying and trying and trying and trying and trying and trying until you succeed, right? Okay, so let's take a look. So this is going to be part of your homework. It's going to ask you to type in the steps. So A is for ask, right? You define the problem. You think about what is the problem. I is for imagine. You do your research. You develop a possible solution. You imagine what that would look like, right? P is for plan. You design your solution. You have to actually plan it out, right? B is for build. You build a prototype. What is that? It's like you're actually coming up with a simple, kind of like, well, this is what it's going to look like, and you're building it. T is for test. You test it out. Did it work? Did it not work? Do we have to go back and fix something? And then I is for improve, right? You evaluate your solution. Does it work, right? And do you need to go back and redo some of the steps to make it actually work better? So that is for you guys to really think about. And so you're going to have to type these steps up. I just want you to be familiar with them so that way you know that, these can be applied to anything when you think about it. It doesn't have to just be engineering. You could just have something that you're you're working on, and you're just like, what's the problem here? What can I do about it? You think about, you remember our problem solving steps from second step, how we were going through each of the steps. They're so similar when you think about it, because when you're solving a problem, you're kind of going through and you're asking yourself, well, what's the problem? Can I imagine a solution to this? How could I, make it work? How could I fix this, right? So it's pretty similar. So when we're asking, we're looking at the problem, we're asking different questions and trying to figure out what exactly the problem is. When we're imagining, we're going through and we're thinking about all the possible solutions. Well, we could do this, we could do that. Would this work? If we did this, what would happen? And we're going through all of them. When we're planning, we're actually coming up with some sketches and whatever it is, I don't know exactly. This is a little picture of the blueprint up there, but it's just you planning out exactly what your solution is going to look like. And then you're building it. So there, I just put some pictures of robots, but it could be anything that you're designing. You're building a prototype of what it would look like if it was created to scale. Testing it out, right? We just talked about this. and then improving it. If it's something isn't working, you're saying, okay, what can I do about this? How can I make it better, right? So those are our steps to our engineering process. So everybody is going to get, let me see. Oh, oops, I didn't type it in there. It's in here. This is going to be your homework. So you're going to have to type, what is the engineering process? Type in what that is. Number 2, you're going to have to type the steps. So A stands for I, type what they stand for. Number 3 says, why is it important for engineers to keep going even after they fail many times? So we just talked about that. And then what is something you failed at but kept trying and eventually succeeded? So I want you to think about it, because it's easy for us sometimes to forget, oh, here, remember that time when I didn't give up and I felt really good about myself and I actually learned, blah, 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 whatever it was that you were going through. It can help to motivate you if you're feeling discouraged or frustrated about something. It can help motivate you to keep going. So I want you to fill this out, type in your answers, email this back to me, and this will count as your assignment for your robotics for week 19. Okay, guys? Alrighty, so I'll see you guys next time. Email me if you have any questions, okay? All right, guys, have a good day. Bye.